Today, I'm going to be talking about psychology tips to help you work smarter and not harder in your business.
I actually broke it out into 2 different videos. So this video is going to cover the first 4 tips, and then next week's video is going to cover the remaining 3 tips for you guys.
So we're going to talk about the 4 different buyer types that you will probably come across. So each one of your clients is kind of going to fall into one of these 4 categories. And we want to make sure that we are speaking to each person so that they have the information they need before they can make the decision to hire you confidently. So the first buyer type is the analytical buyer type. So these people are slower to make decisions. They really love to see facts and numbers. They want to know about the entire process, and they're going to take all that information, synthesize it, take some time, and then make their final decision. The second type is the decisive. So these people are kind of the opposite. So they are very action oriented. They're fast to take the next step with things. They love being able to hear about the results, and they want to know that it's a very efficient and streamlined process throughout everything. And so they really value tangible outcomes, but don't care for every single nitty gritty detail that an analytical buyer type might want to know about. The third is the empathetic. And so they really want to make sure that they are fostering a very personal connection with you. They want to feel understood. They are going to think about their opinions and feelings about things before making a decision. And they're going to consider their partner's feelings and opinions as well before they go to make a final decision. And then the last type is the expressive type. And these people are early adopters. So they might come across your page and just instantly feel a connection. They're like, I love her style. I love his style. I appreciate their process. I think the way that they do things really stands out from the other photographers that we've looked at. They really appreciate excitement at every single part of the process, and storytelling really speaks to them. So these are the 4 different buyer types. And so I want you to really think about, are you speaking to each specific type with everything that you're kind of putting out there as it pertains to your business? So I'm talking in your social media content. Are you really hitting each buyer type on your website or your emails and your correspondence back and forth? And specifically, if you're doing consult calls for something like weddings or even like IPS, like how can you make sure that you're speaking to each buyer type? Or can you figure out like what you think your client's buyer type is so that you can really hone in on that during the sales process with them? So I also want to say that the best copy is never going to be from what you think of from the top, like just coming up with a tagline off the top of your like brain. It's actually going to come from the way that your clients actually speak. And so this again goes back to the buyer types because they're going to have the exact terminology and language that in the way that they are thinking about the entire process of everything. So you want to really leverage that. So some tips, like I mentioned, make sure that you're speaking to every single buyer type along the way. Make sure that you're cultivating your copy from what your clients are saying in your testimonials and maybe what they say during a meeting with you or during a shoot with you. Use this copy all along your website. Use it in a way that it'll help you figure out like what differentiates you from other photographers. I want you to use it in like the taglines, in the subheadings, in your paragraph copy all along your website. I also want you to make sure that you're showcasing testimonials throughout your website and your content that is really, sharing about the whole process and sharing about the whole experience with you, but from the lens of like your clients, because as a buyer and as a consumer, every single buyer type is going to want to know what somebody else's experience is going to be like as a client of yours, and not just like what you are telling them necessarily about the process. And so another quick little copy tip to use is to make sure that your copy is phrased as a question or a bold statement along your website. So we want people to basically be reading things along your website and in their head be thinking, oh yeah, yes, for sure. Or just like really you're getting them to say yes over and over again in their mind before they even come and talk to you. And that'll get them really bought into you, bought into your process, and bought into hiring you as well. And this makes it really easy for them to say yes at the entire end of the decision making process of hiring you. And then the last little tip is to get crafty with your calls to actions on your website to be engaging and from the perspective of your ideal client. So instead of something like get in touch, you want it to be like, I'm ready to chat. Because do you see how that's like phrased from the perspective of your client? Like in their first person voice almost. That's going to be more catchy and more engaging and get people like buying into everything along the way of your website and saying yes in their brain at different points throughout the whole, like your website and your whole sales process. So the next psychology tips are going to be around tackling overwhelm and finding your focus. So we're shifting what we're talking about just a little bit. So this is going to be focused on you as a business owner and how you're showing up for your photography business. So I wanted to introduce the concept of the Pareto principle. And basically what the Pareto principle states is that 80% of your results are really only driven by 20% of your actions. And this is kind of really mind-blowing to think about because a lot of times as the business owner and as the photographer, we're wearing so many hats. We are doing so many tasks day to day. And really, when we sit down to think about it, if we really think about the results and the outcomes and like the bookings that we're looking for, generally the actions that are driving that and driving the income in your business, it's a very handful select number of tasks. And sometimes we feel like we should be doing a lot more to keep gaining the results. And sometimes once you take a task off your plate or you like put it on pause, you like notice that your business continues running. So I wanted to introduce this in case you're feeling like super overwhelmed or you feel like you're doing all the things but not making traction. I want you to really think about mapping this out so that you can figure out what that 20% looks like for you in your business. So you're going to have homework. You're going to take a piece of paper, you're going to fold it hot dog style. So you have a line down the middle, and on the left-hand side, you're going to write down every single task that you do in your business. So this can be everything from, serving your clients. This can be anything pertaining to marketing. This can be anything related to keeping your business afloat, like running day to day, any like admin tasks and everything like that. And then on the right-hand side of your column of your little hot dog page, you're going to write all of the results and bookings that you've had in your business. And I want you to take some time to really map out and draw arrows from what are the tasks that are directly leading to the results that you want in your business. So for example, can you track a booking that you got for a shoot based off of, oh, this person came across your blog post when they Googled portrait photographer in their specific area? That's going to kind of key you into the fact that blogging is well worth your time because that's an action that is actually gaining you a result down the line that makes a huge difference to your bottom line. So this can be a really good clarifying exercise. If you feel like you're doing all the things, not getting the traction that you want, this will help you like really figure out where to focus in and narrow and like pour more of your energy into. And so now I want to flip that and talk about decision fatigue because this is what happens when we can't narrow down our focus. Basically, decision fatigue is the idea that the more choices that we are forced to make throughout the day, throughout the month, throughout the quarter, the more that the quality of our decisions deteriorates. So basically, this says that you have a capacity for any single given day. And in general, you have a capacity, and the more that you have to make decisions around what you're doing in your business, the more you're going to fatigue that and you're going to feel emptier and you're going to feel drained because making decisions is not easy for our brain. So we want to take as many of the decisions off of our plate as possible within our business. So here's the decision fatigue antidote, as I call it. Here are some action steps to take to avoid this if this is something that you keep running across while you're running your photography business. So one is to actually allocate time on your calendar when you know that you're going to tackle a certain type of task in the future. So example, story time. Every single Monday, I used to get super, super overwhelmed when I was working my full-time job and I was like growing my photography business on the side because I felt like I needed to do everything for the week on Monday. And so I had to really get strategic with my time and tell myself, okay, these are the types of tasks that I'm going to do on Monday. I have Tuesday and Wednesday for these particular other set of tasks. If I get an email from my accountant who needs something from me, like my time to work on the finances in my business is Thursday. And so I don't feel the pressure or need to have to do that right now and interrupt something else that was like a very much more like priority task. I can just make sure that I have that on my to-do list for Thursday, and my brain now knows that task is going to be taken care of on Thursday. So it brings down the overwhelm just a little bit because your brain's not, oh shoot, like when am I going to work on this? You already have a predetermined time. And so it helps your brain just feel a little bit safer. Another tip that I have is to designate an admin day once a month where you can tackle all of those like definitely important things. There might not necessarily be urgent throughout the month, but if you can tackle all of those like little pesky tasks, like for me, this was keeping track of like mileage or keeping track of like my receipts and stuff on QuickBooks. This was making sure that my like HoneyBook scheduler or out of office responder was going to be set up to kick on at a particular day in the upcoming month. Like little tasks like that, instead of having to like worry about that every single day or every single week, I have a one particular like morning block off every single month where I have a little checklist that I just run through, and it's a bunch of these little admin tasks that I can just tackle once a month and then not have to think about them for the whole rest of the month. And if there's something that I think of or I realize that I'm doing week to week that I could just put on this list, then I just put it on this list and I don't have to worry about it as much anymore. Okay, so same thing goes in terms of taking a CEO level perspective or just that zoomed out perspective to reflect and figure out what's going on with the business at a higher level perspective. So I call these CEO days and I make sure that I have 2 to 3 kind of blocked off per quarter. So at the beginning of the year, I'll go through and block them out for the whole year. And then every single CEO day, I'll look at the upcoming set of days and make sure that it's not coinciding with anything crazy going on. But basically, these are just days to take a look at the big picture, reflect on the past quarter, reflect on my client work, on my marketing, my business projects. Those are and my finances as well. And then I will take some time to tweak anything that needs to be tweaked, do a quick website audit, or start working on any big business project that I didn't quite have the time to work on over the last 3 months. And then I also make sure that I plan my work for the upcoming quarter ahead. So I have a very detailed quarterly planning process that I'm not going to go into here. If you want that, message me quarterly planning on Instagram and I can share that whole masterclass with you guys. But this really helps with decision fatigue because then I have already laid out a plan for the upcoming 90 days where I know what my focus is for every single week. And if things need to shift around, that's totally fine. But that way my brain's not, oh, what I'm going to work on SEO or when am I going to, update my website page. I have that already mapped out for the upcoming 90 days. All right, so we're going to go into a little bit more time management tips and tricks as well. I'm just flying right through. So something that blew my mind when I first learned about it is that our perception of time is not fixed. So the way that we perceive how much time has gone by actually changes based off of how we relate to what we are doing with that time. So this is kind of like detailed explanation in the book Flow by Michael Chalosky. I'm so not saying his last name correctly, but if you look it up, there's a whole book on it. And basically, what it is that, if you are doing a task that you absolutely dread. So, one of those for me that I don't like doing is like reconciling my books. So, like the finances, like I like numbers, just not my favorite task. For me to do that task, I'm going to think it's going to take way more time for me to actually do it than it actually takes. So versus if I am doing a coaching call with a photographer, I love that. It like is very life-giving for me. I get so energized. And so I'm not going to realize that an hour has flown by because I'm very present to the moment and I love what I'm doing. And so this is really important because our brains will trick us into thinking something like filling out a tax organizer. I totally told myself that was going to take an hour. It actually only took 10 minutes. And so you just want to be careful and conscious of this while you're actually like sitting down and figuring out what to work on at any given time of day. And also this is really important for kind of like kicking procrastination's butt because oftentimes things that we are dreading, we think they're going to take much longer and we think they're going to be much harder than they actually are. So a couple of things to kind of like combat this. So one is batch working. And so something that can be really helpful is to have your brain sit down and focus on one set of tasks and work that one type of task repeatedly because that way your brain is getting really familiar with the task. It always takes us a little bit of time to actually get into something. And then once we're in it, our brain is like, okay, I got it. I know what I'm doing. And so it can repeat that much, much faster than if you were trying to do different things at different times. And so I'm going to expand on that a little bit. So basically, like I mentioned, this like doing the same type of task over and over again will get you into that flow state where you start to lose track of time because your brain is like, oh, I know what we're doing. I'm in it. I'm like in the zone, basically, you know? And so, what was I going to say? Oh, basically, what happens when we don't do this and is when we keep switching between different types of tasks that require different types of our brain is that it's going to take us longer to stop thinking about like the one task prior, start using a different part of our brain and start into another task. And we actually lose 30 to 40 minutes every time you context switch between different types of tasks because they require different parts of your brain. And so one way to avoid this is to make sure that when you sit down to work, you know exactly what it is you're working on. And so, for example, if you are doing your marketing for the upcoming month, instead of being like, okay, I want to write 4 different blog posts and like outlining your blog post, writing your blog post, scheduling out the images, and then sharing it to social, instead of doing that times 4 for the whole month, what you want to do is you want to go through, you want to outline each one of your blog posts first. So you have 4 outlines done. Then you're going to write each one of your 4 blog posts. And then you are going to schedule out all 4 of those blog posts. Do you see how now you're just repeating the same task, but doing it 4 times? That's going to make it so much easier and save you so much time as well. It takes a little bit to get into a task that you might think is difficult, but once you're in it, you're like activating that flow state. And so it becomes so much easier and so much faster. And so applying this to your actual general weekly and monthly schedule as well is to either choose a weekly batch work schedule or a monthly batch work schedule. And so if you're choosing weekly, this is again giving your brain buckets of what you're working on when. And so this is kind of what I recommend for photographers is Monday is going to be your marketing day. Tuesday and Wednesday is really going to be focused on your client tasks. So like client meetings, client communication, shoots, consults, etc. You have time blocked off on Thursday to work on any business projects. So this is going to be something like if you are trying to create like an engagement session style guide or set up a styled shoot or anything like that that's not necessarily like client to work, but is still important to work for your business to move your business forward and to grow. You have time blocked off. So I used to do Thursdays, and then Fridays were my day for tracking all my finances, making sure that those were good. And it was an overflow day in case something happened throughout the week or I didn't finish anything. I had time on Friday to kind of like play catch up or rest before the weekend if I had a lot of shoots coming up that weekend. And so a monthly cadence is going to look a little different where during your quarterly planning days, you're going to map out what your upcoming month or upcoming 3 months looks. So the way that I do this is I make sure that I have my admin days, like my monthly admin days, like I mentioned, blocked off on the calendar. Then I'm going to go through and make sure I have my next set of CEO days blocked off on the calendar. And then I actually mark off specific days. So usually this is anywhere between 3 to 5 days for me to just sit down and batch create all of my marketing content for the upcoming quarter. So that gets kind of like a week of my time on my calendar once a quarter. And then I'm going to go through and look at the upcoming 90 days and see, okay, like what client work do I have on the schedule? Make sure that I have the corresponding editing days blocked off for that. And then any business projects that I'm working on, I'm going to break those down into milestones and then assign that to in between my client work and my marketing days and like slotting the different milestones into the remaining time. The key with this is to make sure you still have your like 1 to 2 buffer days a week in there or a handful of buffer days within each month so that you don't overcommit yourself, especially if you have a shoot that gets added on or somebody gets sick or anything like that. You have like a margin to be flexible with this. Okay, and another thing that's really helpful in terms of your time and task management is to, with every set of tasks or work that you're doing within your business, is really breaking it down into really, really tiny chunks. And so you might put something like edit a wedding on your like planner for your to-do for the day, but your brain's gonna look at that and be like, oh my gosh, that feels like a humongous task. And you're gonna be way more likely to procrastinate on that than if you actually break that down into a smaller set of tasks and instead be like, okay, I'm going to edit the first 100 photos of the like getting ready part of the day. Or if you're doing a family shoot, you're going to edit 50 photos. And when you break down your tasks into smaller chunks, it lowers the activation energy that your brain requires to actually get started on the task. And it's going to prevent you from procrastinating, like I mentioned. And then as you like start to check off that first 15-minute task, that's going to help you build momentum and help you be like, okay, cool, we're like making progress. And then your brain is going to want to keep doing that. So I would recommend like break things down way more than you actually think you need to. Okay. And then if your biggest like issue with time management is feeling like you don't have enough of it, I really recommend using Toggl, Togl. It is a free app. You just have it like pinned in your Chrome or Safari. You can just use it online, and they also have an app on your phone. But that can be really great for figuring out where your time while you're working is going in your business. So all you do is type in what task you're working on. You start the little timer. And then when you're done with your task, you stop the little timer. If you want to be fancy, you can break this down into how much time is going towards marketing, going towards client work, going towards business projects. Those are kind of the three main buckets that I will track. But this really tells me like, okay, I feel like I've worked like 6 hours today, but I've actually worked 4. And this is where my time was going. And it keeps me really focused and zoned in to whatever work that I'm doing, because I can see the little purple timer in the left-hand corner, and it reminds me to keep on task and not get distracted. Another really great resource is a book called 168 Hours. That's a really good read for if you don't feel like you have enough time in your business. The idea is that you have way more pockets of time than you think you do. And the other thing is to break your work down into strategic sprints. So not expecting yourself to get a ginormous project done in one afternoon. Break it down, know what little pockets of time you have to actually work, and plan out your tasks accordingly instead of trying to continually overcommit to what you can actually accomplish in a set amount of time.